Welcome, readers, to Jamie's Kitty's Corner.
Imagine being just 12 years old and having to save an entire village of sailors. Lights, waves, and one brave girl. This is Lighthouse Heroes, When the Storm Came. In a quiet coastal village where seabirds soared and waves whispered against the shore, lived Emma, a 7-year-old girl with a laugh as bright as the Fresnel lens that crowned their lighthouse. Every evening she'd climb the 100 spiral steps to the lantern room with her father, the village's sole lightkeeper, her small hand trailing along the whitewashed walls of their towering home. These evening routines were Emma's favorite time. She'd watch mesmerized as her father polished the magnificent glass lens until its brass rings gleamed and rainbow patterns danced across the walls. He'd lift her on his shoulders to help trim the lamp's thick wick and check the kerosene levels in the fuel reservoir. "Remember, Emma," he'd say, writing in their weathered logbook, every entry tells a story of ships kept safe. Together, they'd step onto the gallery deck, where her father would teach her to read the sky. He showed her how to watch the barometer's silver needle and count the seconds between lightning and thunder. From their perch high above the sea, Emma could spot fishing boats returning home, their sails catching the golden light of sunset. One stormy evening, when the barometer dropped sharply and dark clouds roiled across the horizon, urgent news arrived. The storm had damaged the harbor's main dock, and several fishing boats were still at sea. Emma's father had to help with repairs, knowing the boats would need the harbor for safe return. "Stay inside," he instructed, pulling on his oilskin coat. "I'll be back as soon as I can." But as the sky darkened and the wind howled through the lighthouse windows, Emma knew something was wrong. The clockwork mechanism that turned the lens needed winding, and the lamp would soon need tending. Without the light, the fishing boats wouldn't know where the dangerous rocks lay beneath the churning waves. Her heart pounding like the waves against the rocks, Emma put on her father's spare coat, the sleeves falling well past her hands. The rain lashed at her face as she pushed against the wind, climbing the hill to the lighthouse door. Inside, she climbed the familiar spiral staircase, counting each step as she always did with her father. In the lantern room, rain drummed against the glass panels, but Emma knew what to do. She carefully trimmed the wick as she'd watched her father do countless times, her small fingers steady despite her fear. The brass clockwork mechanism was heavy, but she turned the crank until she heard the satisfying click of full tension. Through the storm's fury, she heard the familiar tick, tick, tick of the rotating lens. The massive Fresnel lens began its dance, its crystal prisms catching and magnifying the lamp's flame into a powerful beam that cut through the darkness. From her high perch, Emma pressed her face against the glass, watching the beam sweep across the angry sea. Through curtains of rain, she could make out the distant shapes of boats, carefully navigating away from the treacherous coastline. When her father finally returned, soaked but safe, he found Emma in the lantern room, carefully recording the weather conditions in the lighthouse log, just as he'd taught her. His eyes filled with pride as he read her carefully printed words: "Storm from the northeast. Heavy rain. All boats safe." "You did it perfectly," he whispered, wrapping her in a warm embrace. "My brave little lightkeeper." As they made their way down the spiral staircase together, Emma touched the walls of their lighthouse home, feeling its steady strength. Outside, the storm was beginning to calm, and the first stars peeked through breaks in the clouds. The lighthouse beam swept across the now quiet harbor where the fishing boats rested safely at anchor, their crews home with their own families, thanks to one little girl's courage and dedication. That night, as Emma drifted off to sleep, To the familiar rhythm of the rotating lens above, she knew that she was part of something bigger than herself, a legacy of lightkeepers who kept watch over the sea, guiding sailors safely home through the darkest of nights.